Welcome to the Deep Dive. This week, we're digging into some of the most critical stories coming out of the latest editions of Addis Fortune.
That's right. We're taking these really detailed reports from Ethiopia's largest English weekly and, trying to connect the dots.
And our mission, as always, is to distill what you really need to know from these complex issues. We're talking everything from a crippling logistics crisis to how you tax a TikTok star.
It's all about the friction, really. You see this ambitious government drive for modernization clashing with some very harsh realities.
Geopolitical realities, regulatory gaps, you name it.
Exactly. And we'll see today how a sudden move by a neighbor is threatening a huge economic reform. And look at the, frankly, heartbreaking human cost when mining regulations change overnight.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with this massive crisis at the ports. It's threatening one of Ethiopia's key reforms, trying to fix the logistics nightmare.
Nightmare is the right word. I mean, Ethiopia has been ranked, 126th out of 160 countries in logistics performance. It's a huge bottleneck.
So to fix this, the government finally licensed private multimodal operators, companies like Ethio-Djibouti Railway and Gulf Ingot FCC.
The idea was to inject some competition, right? To finally break the decades-old monopoly of the state-owned ESLSE.
And hopefully bring down those crippling costs and delays. But this reform hit an immediate, and I mean immediate, wall.
A catastrophic wall. What happened was Djibouti, with no formal notice, just barred these new operators from issuing something called a bill of lading.
And for anyone who doesn't live in the shipping world, that bill of lading is basically the passport for your cargo.
It's everything. It's the core legal document you need for customs, for insurance, for trade. Without it, your goods go absolutely nowhere. The whole supply chain just grinds to a halt.
So what was the consequence for these new companies?
Total suspension of operations overnight.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine you're Gasha Hailu, the CEO of Ethio Rail Logistics. You've paid huge guarantees, signed contracts.
And now you're just stuck at a complete standstill.
Exactly. Or Gulf Ingot. They have $500 million birr in registered capital just sitting there completely paralyzed.
But wait, Ethiopia accounts for 70% of the cargo that goes through Djibouti's ports. They're Djibouti's biggest customer by a huge margin. Why on earth would they do this?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? And what the sources are really stressing is how this exposed a massive geopolitical vulnerability.
What kind of vulnerability?
A legal one.
Yeah.
Industry veterans believe the timing is no accident. The binding bilateral agreement, the memorandum of understanding that governed all this, it expired.
So there's a legal vacuum?
A vacuum that Djibouti seems to be exploiting. Without a renewed binding agreement, there's nothing to stop this kind of arbitrary action.
And the scale here is just staggering. We're not just talking about 70% of the port's total volume. It's over 90% of its container traffic.
We're talking 800,000 to 1 million containers a year. It's immense.
I know a high-level delegation went to Djibouti last week to meet with President Gele.
Yes, but diplomacy moves slowly. And every single day that cargo sits idle, businesses are bleeding money. The commercial urgency and the diplomatic pace are just on two different planets.
So we have instability driven by a neighbor, but, that same kind of policy whiplash is happening inside Ethiopia, too.
Oh, absolutely. Which brings us to our next story. Let's shift from the coast to the Kenticha mine in the Guji zone, Oromia.
Where sudden policy U-turns have basically silenced what were once really busy mining pits.
And this is where you see the human cost in the most visceral way. Take a man named Temujin Desema, father of 5. He got a text message.
A text message.
A blunt, impersonal text message telling him his small mining permit was canceled. Just like that. His income, which was anywhere from 4 to 10,000 birr a month, gone.
Wow. He had to move his kids out of private school.
Back into public school. And it's not just individuals. The Burka Iba Association, they invested 70 million birr from bank loans, employed over 200 people.
Let me guess, their permit was canceled too.
Canceled in the second year of a 5-year agreement, they went bankrupt.
And there's the story of Ame Sukena. She mortgaged her own home.
Mortgaged her home, invested 40 million birr, and is now facing foreclosure from the bank. These aren't just numbers. These are people whose lives were destroyed because a policy changed on a dime.
So what was the policy shift? What's the government's reasoning here?
The core conflict is this new push for value addition. The government essentially said, no more exporting raw strategic minerals like lithium and tantalum.
Okay, so they want processing to happen inside Ethiopia. That makes sense as a long-term goal.
It does.
Yeah.
But the message to the small miners was brutal. It was basically, Pool your resources, become a huge share company, or get out. Abandon the ground you've poured your life savings into.
So the idea is to clear the way for big, serious players who can do the processing. But does this policy whiplash create stability for them? Does it actually attract the big investors they want?
That is the critical question. And the answer, according to the sources, is a resounding no. It doesn't even work for them.
How so?
Look at Kentecha mining play. They had a massive, large-scale license signed by the minister, valid until 2026. This was supposed to be Ethiopia's first industrial lithium mine.
Huge deal.
A huge deal. And yet, in May of this year, the ministry ordered them to surrender that very license. They cited repeated warnings to start production.
So they were forced back into exploration mode.
Exactly. Their entire legal status is now in limbo. And if you do that to a massive international player, what message does that send to any other potential investor? It signals deep, deep regulatory failure.
And we should care because Kentecha is sitting on incredibly strategic resources, right? We're talking lithium, tantalum.
Building blocks of the global electronics and battery market, we're talking about an estimated 87 million tons of ore. Foreign investors like Arena Investors and Kifi are watching this very closely.
It's baffling. Okay, let's shift from what's under the ground to the high cost of what grows on top of it. Let's talk macroeconomic pressures, starting with fertilizer.
A huge issue for every farmer. Global prices for urea and DAP have spiked over 40% year on year.
And that's a massive drain on the country's foreign currency reserves. Fertilizer is what, 10% of the total import bill?
A staggering 10%. That's about $1.8 billion a year. And when the birr is depreciating, that pain is just amplified.
Right. A weaker birr makes all imports more expensive. It just erodes any benefit you get from your own exports, like coffee or gold.
And on the farm, that anxiety is real. You have farmers like Badme Fimente, who produces teff. He's worried he won't even be able to afford the 15 quintals he needs. The prices are soaring and the delivery is late.
And this kind of macro instability, this uncertainty, it just spills over and creates chaos in smaller markets like the spice market.
A perfect example, look at cardamom or kororima.
The prices just exploded, didn't they? From around 1,500 birr a kilogram to, what was it?
Between 2,700 and 2,900 birr, it basically doubled in a matter of days.
And what's wild is that officials say there's no supply shortage. Production is stable.
Exactly. They're saying the price spike is completely unreasonable. The problem is purely structural. It's weak market links, hoarding, and illicit traders who bypass all the formal channels.
So it's a regulatory gap.
A huge one. Unlike coffee, spices have no tracking system. There's no traceability. It creates this disfitted market where, as one expert put it, speculation itself has become a price maker.
This problem of untrackable markets, it leads us right to the next big challenge. Because if you can't track cardamom, how do you plan to track earnings from a YouTube channel?
Right. And that's what the government is trying to figure out. They have a new draft regulation from the Ministry of Finance to formalize and tax the digital content economy.
We're talking about creators on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram.
It's a major effort to expand the tax base. The rule is, if you earn at least 100,000 birrs a year, you need to register, get a tax ID, keep records, and pay a 15% quarterly business income tax.
Which, in principle, makes sense. It's a real economy now.
A significant one. But when you talk to the creators themselves, like Brooke Schifferah and Daniel Desline, you see the friction immediately.
They say their income is totally volatile. It's based on gifts, random ads. How do you keep detailed receipts for that?
It's almost impossible. But here's the real kicker, the core systemic problem. Ethiopia doesn't have a domestic payment system like a PayPal or Stripe that's integrated with these global platforms.
So how do the creators get paid?
Many are forced to use foreign bank accounts, and that makes tracking the revenue for tax purposes incredibly complicated for the authorities. It's a huge barrier to compliance.
Before we move on, there was a quick positive update on the finance front.
Yes, a rare bit of good news. Ethiopian Airlines has managed to repatriate almost 2/3 of about $500 million that was trapped overseas.
So they're getting their money out. About $140 million is still stuck, but that's a big
A
improvement.
huge improvement. Officials say it's because of better foreign currency availability and some policy reforms, like letting airlines transact in dollars. So targeted action can work.
Okay, let's end with one last story about friction. A major labor dispute at Flipper International School.
Right. The union, representing over 300 employees, threatened to go on strike. and their complaints were pretty serious.
It wasn't just about low pay, which they said was 2 to 3 times lower than competitors. It was about workload.
A huge workload. Teachers being asked to handle over 30 teaching periods a week when the legal limit is 20.
That's a clear violation, but the response from the city was unexpected.
Very unique. The Addis Ababa Police Commission just blocked the strike. They stepped in and prevented it from happening.
And what grounds?
They set it a rule that only the government can authorize a school to close. It was a clever move that basically forced the dispute away from a work stoppage and pushed everyone toward dialogue in the labor tribunals.
So it disarmed the union of its most powerful tool, the strike itself.
It did. It prevented disruption for the students, but it forced the workers to rely on the often very slow labor justice system to get a resolution.
So when you step back and look at everything we've talked about today, what's the pattern?
The pattern is clear, isn't it? We see these really ambitious, often necessary government reforms,
Logistics, mining, expanding the tax base.
all running headlong into these deeply entrenched realities. Geopolitical friction with Djibouti, policy whiplash that destroys small investors, and just the practical challenges of a dollar-constrained economy.
The sources from Addis Fortune really highlight that success hinges on closing these gaps, right? You need that binding MOU with Djibouti. You need to enforce rules against speculators in the spice market.
And you have to make sure your high-level policies don't end up causing financial ruin for the very people you need to build the economy, from miners in Kinticha to teachers at Flipper.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The government is working hard to bring digital content creators into the tax net, which acknowledges how big that economy is becoming.
A necessary step.
But if the country lacks the basic payment infrastructure to let those creators get paid seamlessly and transparently, if everyone is forced to use informal foreign accounts, is the effort to tax the revenue putting the cart before the horse? Something to think about.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining this deep dive into the latest from Addis Fortune. Good luck out there.